Working on Bandai's B-Wing Starfighter, and I wanted to go over a little bit of the process that I used to get it to this stage. The steps have you build the model in subsections. This is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. What I decided to do is get step 1 fully completed, ready to go, and then I could just snap it together. These Bandai kits snap together, they fit incredibly well, and assembly this way, it doesn't work on a lot of other kits, but it works on a Bandai kit. So what I did was I started off by priming each of the various colors of parts in a different color. Bandai kits come in multiple colors. This one was cast in white, light blue, and medium gray. The blue parts I primed with white primer. I use Badger Stynylrez primer for pretty much everything I do. This was primed in white. The white parts were primed in a light gray. I literally put white in the color cup, primed this, added some gray Badger Stynylrez, painted the white parts with the light gray, added a few touches of black, primed the gray parts in a darker gray. The reason I do that is so that the later coats of paint that I put on top of the primer will have the saturation that I want. I want the blue parts to have a nice saturation, so they'll have the white underlying them. The white I prime in light gray so that when I paint it white, I can see where I've already painted and where I've already primed. I can see some distinction there. Also, by priming this in a light gray and then painting it in white, when I put this blue over it, this blue would go over white just like it went over here, so the saturation would be about the same. Works out all around. The interior parts, the mechanical parts, those were painted with Vallejo Phantom Gray from the Mecha Color line. And then I picked out, using other lighter colors, the leather padding, the details in the cockpit, the wiring, all of those things were painted with a number 0 round brush. It's got a good point on it. I used a cheap one. It wasn't, I don't even know the manufacturer. It's one that I got for a couple of bucks at Hobby Lobby. So I'm a cheap brush guy. This part of the cockpit was probably the most involved. It's very nicely cast. And I did some dry brushing with Vallejo Sky Gray, added a wash of non-oil gloss from Citadel to bring out the recesses. And then I did some more detail painting and called it done. I'm not going all out on this model in terms of trying to super detail it. I'm just having fun, which is what I talk about all the time. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. The pilot here, I've named Fast Eddie. He's painted in a reddish brown uniform. That's actually some Vallejo surface primer, German red brown. I liked the way it looked. And then leather brown is what I use for his gloves, his boots, his vest, his helmet, then a lighter shade of that for his helmet, and then his white Mickey Mouse ears. His face is a mix of some pink and some white, and then he's got his big giant eyes that he blinks at you with. And every time I look at him, I think of that line in Men in Black. You know, those aren't eyes, they're gills. That's how my mind works. After I painted these parts white, I masked off and painted this stripe here to make that work for this part that will attach onto it eventually. Right here, I just temporarily attached it, masked it off, held it like this, masked it off on either side, cut it with a hobby knife, repeated it for the other side, and that way I could paint these two parts separately and this part to get the blue stripes on either side, and everything would line up when I put it all together. Or at least that's the hope. I did some additional assembly before the full assembly on this part. This engine, or whatever this thing is, it had this gray interior section, and then 4 white parts went over the outside. So I painted this all separately, and then I brought it together and masked off for the blue stripes and painted those on afterwards. The blue that I'm using is actually Azure Blue, A-Z-U-R-E, Azure, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, from Vallejo Model Air. It's, if you've built World War II aircraft, it's the color that's on the underside of anything used in the Desert Air Force generally. That kind of light blue. It's got, I don't know, just maybe a hint of red or purple to it, just the barest touch. But I really like the color. This is the kit plastic color. This is a little bluer, a little more vivid than the kit plastic color. But I wanted to give it a little more punch because I knew once I added weathering on top of it, it would tone it down a bit. Plus, I like the contrast. I don't like colors on my models being kind of muddied up so that it's hard to tell the difference. I like contrast. It's just a style I prefer. So this is the net result of assembling everything in step 1 for Bandai's B-Wing Starfighter, and I can then put it together and have it ready for weathering and later later assembly steps and weathering. But I don't have to worry about putting it together, then masking things off to try and paint the various grays and whites and where they come together. Bandai, because of the way they build their models, it's possible to do this. The fit is so good that you can make it happen that way. Okay, I'm going to put everything together and I'm going to let you watch me do it. I've got my handy dandy instructions here that I'm going to have off to the side. And the assembly for these kits goes pretty quickly. If you're building it, just snap it up, build it. Even some of the more involved kits, what you're going to spend most of your time doing is cleaning up the nub marks. Assembly goes really fast. So I'm going to take the cockpit and I need to add the pilot in. You have to be careful on a lot of these Bandai Star Wars kits. I may be able to get away with it this one, but on a lot of them you have to put the pilot in because there's going to be something that goes over his knees or his legs or whatever to lock him in place. This little guy looks like I can slide him on the seat right there, and with the paint and everything, it's a tight fit, but that means he's going to stay. And then this goes here. Yeah, it was good to get him in ahead of time. I probably could have made it work without that. Hear that satisfying click? That's Bandai for you. So there we've got our cockpit unit ready to go. And now I take this part and he goes right in there like that. And what I'm doing is I'm having to line up. There's some little pins here and there's some here. And you see the way they do it? You can't get it wrong. You can't put it in wrong. They set it up so that it has to go in a particular way. You just have to be a 7-year-old or smarter than me to get it to work. There we go. Yeah, the fit on these is incredibly tight. They ain't playing around, y'all. There's a reason that their stuff works so good. Now, I've got the canopy here. I'm not going to put it on yet because I'm actually going to do a video on using parafilm to mask your canopies. So the canopy is going to stay off for now. They do make a framed version without any clear parts. I guess that's so that it looks more like what was in the movie. But I'm not going to be putting that on right now. Okay, next we're going to take this part that I had already pre-assembled, and they use in the instructions, I don't know if you can see this, but they use little symbols to tell you, hey, you need to orient it this way. So once you get everything oriented, so it's telling me that I need to look for, let's see, what am I looking for? Those three parts there. That's where the little rabbit ears are that tells me, hey, that's what you got to pay attention to. That fits here. Doesn't it? Well, I just said if it doesn't fit, you're doing it wrong. Well, there we go. Okay, I just proved the point. See, that's flat. That part. Wow, their instructions are wrong. Or I put this in, no? I'm not sure. Because they're showing in the instructions that this flat part, this should be down here, but, well, whatever the case, there's that. That's page 1. Now, we take this part, and one of these grills that's going to poke through right here, and we're going to snap it in there, get it pushed down real nicely. So see how nice that works? It just fits just right. And then we're going to take this and, oh, I see, they didn't get their instructions wrong. It's just hard to see which way is up because of the way they do the canopy. That fits right in there. Now, I'm not a fan of articulation on kits. I mean, that articulation is going to rub paint, so I'm not a real big fan of that. I'll eventually glue that in place. Now I'm going to take this and put it on this other side and snap that in there, push it in real good, make sure that it looks nice right there. And then we're going to see how this looks when we bring it together. Make sure that I'm not missing any parts. Yeah, before you snap some of these Bandai kits together, make sure you have all the parts in that you need to, because on a lot of them, when you snap it together, you ain't getting it apart. Not without doing some damage. So I'll snap this together. And you have to do it often progressively. The pins that hold everything together are quite tight, and if you just try and push the whole thing together, it won't work. But if you do it a little section at a time, now you could run a bead of glue along here just to make sure that that stays tight. And if you were pre-assembling this and then painting it, you would certainly want to run a bead of glue, sand it down, because you do get a little bit of a seam. I mean, anytime you bring two pieces of plastic together, that's as tight a fit as I've ever seen on a plastic model, but there's still a seam. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to live with it. Now we take this part and it goes on the top. Now, one thing to note, one, they just covered up a seam line, which is beautiful the way Bandai does that. But here again, notice that they point out this panel goes on this side. So they give you some clues as to the orientation of all the parts. Now, this goes here, this little grab handle. I have no idea why this is, what this is, but they say it goes there, so there it is. And we're going to take this part and this part, and they don't give us any warnings about alignment, so I'm just going to fit it right in. And then it does have a notch here and a notch here so that I get that oriented right. And I'm going to put that on there. You hear the way that, how tight that is? You can hear the plastic crunching as I put it together. It's not a bad thing. But it proves once you get it together, you ain't getting it apart. Now I've got that part on nicely. Now I need to orient the part that way, get what I'm calling the extra fuel tank for this side. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the instructions as I'm doing this and making sure everything's oriented right. And then I want to take this part, put it on here. And again, the alignment, the pins for alignment leave virtually no room for error. Now, I've managed to mess up a few things from time to time, not only on this video and on previous builds, but for the most part, it's idiot proof. I'm just a bigger idiot than Bandai ever anticipated. Then this goes on right here, and you see how nicely it fits against that blue. The reason I didn't assemble this and then paint it blue is I wanted to make sure to get the inside blue. And now that I'm looking at it, I realize you can't see anything in there, so it doesn't matter. But hey, that's what being a modeler is about, doing stuff that doesn't matter. So let me turn the page on the instructions. Grab this guy, put him together. Whoops, I'm off camera. Sorry about that. Still learning this. Nice fit. Stick him in here. Yeah, the fit is so precise. You have to get everything aligned just right. Once it's aligned, it goes in. But if you're not getting everything aligned, it ain't going in. Like this little tubing here, I must not have, let's see, I must not have got it positioned just right. There we go. Hear that click? I love that click, the Bandai click. It means you have succeeded in this step. Now, this engine part, the nozzles go on the back of the engine here. They fit on this. It was designed to have a lighting kit that would stick in here. This part was actually clear. And the theory being when you put these over it and you put these over it, you could turn it on and it would glow. I'm not going to use the lighting kit, so I just primed over it. So I built this ahead of time. Now I'm just going to stick the nozzles on, and again, they've got alignment pins that make it almost John-proof. I'm going to leave these out because I want to do a little more additional painting inside of them separate from this part, and these will fit in at any time, so I can set these aside. I'm going to do them, I'm going to paint them. If you've ever looked at the nozzles of, say, an F-18 Hornet or something like that, they appear to have this almost ceramic tan color, and I kind of like that for the inside of jet nozzles, so I decided that I'm going to do these like that just to give them a touch of real-world realism. I just realized I forgot to put this guy on, so let's snap him in place. Now this one, for whatever reason, feels a little loose, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of my Tamiya extra thin cement, and I'm going to just put a dose of it inside where the tabs fit, so that I don't mess with the existing paint. Because you see the Tamiya cement, it immediately begins taking paint off, so you have to be careful with that. But I can coat the inside of these little tabs here, stick that on, and once I get a wash on it and weather it and all of that, it'll be good to go. Now, Move Mr. Tamiya extra thin cement out of the way. It warns me that these need to be on the sides, so let me put those in, and they go, am I doing it right? Yep, there it goes, right in. God, I love that. That is just so awesome. Now this little part I pre-assembled. It's got a little greebly on it, a little tank right there. One of the fun things to do on these Bandai kits, when you're looking at, especially the Y-wing, if you build the Y-wing, there's actually shovels on the Y-wing. You have to look, it's on the aft, rear, upper fuselage. But one of the great things to do is to look at all the greeblies on these kits, and you can find, you can look at them and go, oh, that's from such and such a model. I mean, Bandai did such a good job of replicating what Industrial Light and Magic did on the originals that you can actually find the parts that they used on the kit. So final part is, it gives me some orientation instructions, says this goes in here, and a little bit of a tight fit as always, but I can pull these together. I'm going to trim this up. I've still got this part to put underneath here. I'm going to trim it up and put it on. I'm going to have to clean up a nub. I knew I was going to have to do that. I'm not going to bore you with that. Of course, I got the canopy. But you see, in just a few minutes, and this was all pre-painted, I've got the main pilot pod, engine pod, whatever you want to call it, of the B-Wing fighter ready to go. And as you're assembling it, you may chip some paint here and there with your, for my fingernails a lot of times may chip off a little bit of paint. Sometimes I leave it because it's chipping. It looks okay. You can go back later and paint on, if you want the chip to be a darker color, you can go back and paint on the color and it works fine. Right here I noticed there's a little bit of a misalignment in the stripe that I have. I may go back in and hand paint that to align this up here and to clean this up. I may just do some chipping to disguise that and not worry too much about it. All right, so there it is, and the pilot's, he's looking pretty good in there. The minimal paint job I did, I think it'll work out. I don't know how well that's shown up on camera, but I think it'll work out because once it's under the canopy, it's got the framing on, you'll see a lot of contrast and you'll see a lot of detail, but rarely does anybody look at it this far away from it. Most people, if they're looking at it, they're going to see it here. And I try to build a model. It's fun to get in there and, you know, use the tiniest brush possible and make the tiniest details. And sometimes I like to do that. For this one, I'm just more building it like a kid. And I'm okay with, okay, does it look okay a foot away, 2 feet away? And once I weather it and do all the panel lining and all the things that I'm going to do, I don't know that people are going to be too, they're going to look at the cockpit, but in the bigger scheme of things, that's not going to be the feature of it. You notice how this rotates. That's pretty cool. I'm probably going to end up gluing it because articulation scrapes paint, and I don't want that to happen, but I do love how they can engineer such great fitting kits and yet still have them move. It's just astounding why the rest of the world can't step up to the standard that Bandai sets. I don't know. So that's the B-Wing fighter fuselage and main engine section. If you haven't built a Bandai Star Wars kit, heck, if you haven't built a Bandai kit, pick one up. This one, I think this one was maybe around $30, but I picked up the Land Speeder with a coupon at Hobby Lobby. I want to say it was $17, $18. That's a great kit to start with. If you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, it's a really good kit. And give the Bandai kits a try, because whatever you've been building, no matter how good it is, you're really going to be impressed with the engineering. I'm a longtime aircraft guy, and I thought nobody could beat Tamiya or Edward, but I've gotten to where if Bandai put out every kit that I would like to build, I would build nothing but Bandai kits. The only time I build something other than Bandai is because Bandai doesn't put it out. And I know I sound like a Bandai fanboy, but they fit so good. They fit good. You can snap them together. They come pre-colored. You can do as little or as much as you want, and it looks cool. What more can you ask for? So I'm going to wrap up this video. I apologize. It's kind of choppy. It's it's my first video like this, so bear with me. But it's Patreon supporter only. So I do want to thank you Patreon supporters, for getting behind me on this. I will improve over time, I promise. If only because repetition makes things a little better. I'm learning as I go. Like one of the things I learned is my camera will only film 10 minutes at a time, which has changed the way I'm doing things. I probably need to get a real camera, because right now I'm using my phone. But I thank you for being a supporter. I thank you for looking at the blog, for keeping up on social media. Please, if you like what I do and you're inclined to do so, please share with your friends the Facebook page, the blog link, and just let them know, hey, there's this goofy guy building models and he's just trying to have fun with it. I know there's plenty of other guys and gals that build models and put their videos up, and they're great too, and I enjoy them just like you do. But I really appreciate the support that folks have given me and where things are going. I'm having a good time with it. So next video, I'll cover adding the wings to the model and some additional painting. And then the third video, we will look at weathering and finish it up. Be sure and check the blog in a few days, as I'll have an article about this piece here. Much of it will be repetition of what's been in this video, just in written form. Maybe a few different things. I may not cover everything in that I've covered here. We'll see. I have a bad memory, so I may or may not remember what I've already said. But take a look and keep up with this build. And thank you again for being a supporter. Have a great day. Bye-bye.